Hello and welcome to this AZ-900 exam practice questions video on Tech with Jaspal. This video is packed with 100 questions from our question bank of our 420 questions, and we are specifically focusing on question number 101 to question number 200 in this video. I'll provide you in-depth explanation with each question and validate options while trying to do things in Azure portal where possible. We will also look at Microsoft documentation in most cases to confirm the validity of the chosen responses. So try to go through the complete video without skipping anything, as that will prepare you to answer many more variations of these questions as well. If you think I'm going too slow or too fast anywhere, then feel free to adjust the playback speed to suit your comfort level. So with this, let's start with first question of this part of the series.
Deploying your own data center is an example of CapEx. Again, you need to choose between yes or no. Yes, this is a correct statement. Deploying your own data center is an example of CapEx. This is because you need to purchase all the infrastructure upfront before you can use it. Now, talking about the second term, which is OpEx. OpEx, there is no upfront cost, but you pay for the service product as you use it. And cloud is one of the biggest examples of OpEx. Now, I already have a detailed video around what are the differences between CapEx and OpEx and how they vary from each other and in which model they are preferred. There is the link to that video on your screen, which will again be available in the description section. If you are interested in learning more about CapEx and OpEx, go through the video. Which of the following should you use to evaluate whether your company's Azure environment meets regulatory requirements? Your options are Azure Service Health, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Azure Knowledge Center, Azure Advisor. The correct answer is option B, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. It continually compares the configuration of your resources with requirements in industry standards, regulations, and benchmarks. The regulatory compliance dashboard provides insight into your compliance posture based on how you are meeting specific compliance requirements. Next question. What is guaranteed in an Azure service level agreement for virtual machines? Your options are feature availability, bandwidth, uptime, performance. And the correct answer in this case is uptime. SLAs define Microsoft commitments for uptime and connectivity for Microsoft online services. If you are someone who is interested in knowing about the SLAs, then you can refer to the link on your screen. It will give you an option to download the current and archived editions of the SLA, and it covers Azure Dynamic 365, Office 365, and Microsoft Intune as well. Let's look at next question of the series. You plan to map a network drive from several computers that run Windows 10 to Azure storage. You need to create a storage solution in Azure for the planned map drive. What should you create? Your options are a virtual machine data disk, a file service in a storage account, a blob service in a storage account, an Azure SQL database. So the correct answer is option B, a file service in a storage account. Azure Files is Microsoft's easy-to-use cloud file system. Azure File shares can be seamlessly used in Windows and Windows servers. To use an Azure file share with Windows, you must either mount it which means assigning it a drive letter or mount point path, or you can access it via its UNC path. Question number 105. Your company has several business units. Each business unit requires 20 different Azure resources for daily operation. All the business units require the same type of Azure resources. You need to recommend a solution to automate the creation of the Azure resources. What should you include in the recommendations? Now you can see you are talking about a template. Basically, you want to create same resource multiple times and automate things at the same time as well. So you are talking about something closely related to templates. And out of the four questions that are there on your screen, option D is Azure Resource Manager templates, also called as ARM templates. So the correct answer in this case is option D, ARM templates. If you are interested in knowing more about ARM templates, I highly recommend you to go through the link on my screen now. If you are someone who works with infrastructure as a code, you would already be familiar with this if you are dealing with infrastructure as a code in Azure. But there are other third-party tools as well. Apart from ARM templates, you can use Bicep, which is Microsoft's new official language that is a replacement of ARM templates going forward. You can also use Terraform as well, but that is out of the scope of this video. So let's focus to the ARM templates at this point. Question number 106. Which node in the Azure portal should you use to assign a user the reader role for a resource group? Your options are User Access Management, Policy Hub, Access Control or IAM, User Role Management. The correct answer is option C, Access Control. On your screen, you can see a screenshot I took while assigning role for a resource group. The resource group name here is automation. No matter if the question talks about a role other than reader, then still the answer would be same. Whether you are assigning a reader role or you are assigning any other role, you will follow the same process when you are assigning role to a resource group. On the left-hand side in the ribbon, you can see access control IAM. Once you click that, then you get an option of add. After you click on add, you get add role assignment, and then you can choose the role and select it. Let's look at next question of the series. To deploy an application to a number of Azure virtual machines, you should create a universal group. Now, there are some instructions for you. Review the underlined text. If it makes the statement correct, select no changes needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. So if you think the statement is correct, you need to choose no changes needed. And if you think the statement is incorrect, then you need to choose the right option. Your options are A, no changes needed, B, resource, C, deployment, D, security. So this statement is definitely not correct. The correct answer is C. There is something called deployment group in Azure DevOps. A deployment group is a logical set of deployment target machines that have agents installed on each one. Deployment groups represent the physical environments, for example, dev, test, or production environment. A deployment group is just another grouping of agents, much like an agent pool. If you are someone who has worked on TeamCity or Jenkins for their continuous integration, you would already be across the terms like agent pools, where you create a pool of agent. Your agent pool can be something like the agents that are used for production or test environment deployment, or it can be a combination of Mac agents, Linux agents, or Ubuntu agents, so on. You can do the grouping based on your requirement. Moving on to question number 108 of the series. Your company has a software assurance agreement that includes Microsoft SQL Server licenses. You plan to deploy SQL Server on Azure virtual machines. What should you do to minimize licensing costs for the deployment? Your options are configure Azure cost management budgets, deallocate the virtual machine during off hours, use Azure reservations, use Azure hybrid benefit. The correct answer in this case is option D, use Azure hybrid benefit. Hybrid benefit is a licensing benefit that helps you to significantly reduce the costs of running your workloads in the cloud. It works by letting you use your on-premise software assurance enabled Windows Server and SQL Server licenses on Azure. Let's now look at another variation of this question. If Windows Server or Microsoft SQL Server licenses covered by which of the following, you can repurpose the licenses on Azure virtual machine. As I've explained in the previous question, so you would already know the correct answer in this case is the last one, which is software assurance. Now you need to remember that there can be multiple variations of the question that you are seeing here. You can just reword a question and a new question will come up. So try to pay attention to the questions that are on your screen. Do not try to memorize them, and instead try to understand what is being asked in the question. That will help you to a greater extent in getting prepared for your exam and applying things in the practical environment. I'm sure you wouldn't want to just pass an exam, but you would want to apply things in practical life as well. So it is always advised that instead of learning the questions or answer, you try to understand what is being talked about here and try to apply it in your practical experience. Let's move to question number 110 of the series. A premier support plan can only be purchased by companies that have an enterprise agreement, EA. You need to choose between yes or no. Yes, the statement is correct. A premier plan can only be purchased by companies that have enterprise agreement. You can manage an on-premise Windows server as an Azure resource by using which of the following? Your options are Azure Arc, Azure AD Connect, Azure VPN Gateway, Azure Pipelines Agent. The correct answer is option A, Azure Arc. It is a service that allows you to manage on-premise servers and other resources as part of your Azure hybrid environment. With Azure Arc, you can use the same tools, APIs, and portals that you use to manage Azure resources to manage your on-premise resources as well. Azure Arc even lets you manage servers hosted in other cloud providers as AWS or GCP. Let's look at next question of the series. Which of the following uses inbound and outbound rules to filter network traffic to and from Azure resources connected to Azure virtual networks? Your options are internal load balancer, application security group, network security group, public load balancer. The correct answer is network security group. You can use an Azure network security group to filter network traffic between Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. A network security group contains security rules that allow or deny inbound network traffic to or outbound network traffic from several types of Azure resources. For each rule, you can specify source and destination, port and protocol. Let's look at some yes or no questions now. Trust Center provides information about the Azure compliance offering. You need to tell whether the statement is right or wrong. Yes, this statement is correct. You can improve composite SLA by adding redundant services to your application. Again, you need to tell whether the statement is right or wrong. Yes, this statement is also correct. All Azure services in private preview must be accessed by using separate Azure portal. No, this statement is incorrect. Private preview features are also accessed using the regular Azure portal. However, you will need to sign up for the feature. This is typically by invite only and issued directly by the product team responsible for the feature or service. Question number 116 of the series. Which of the following is Microsoft's managed network security service in Azure that protects Azure virtual network resources? Your options are Azure Bastion, Application Security Group, Azure Sentinel, Azure Firewall. The correct answer is Azure Firewall, which is a cloud-native and intelligent network firewall security service that provides the best of breed threat protection for your cloud workloads running in Azure. It is a fully stateful firewall as a service with built-in high availability and unrestricted cloud scalability. In case you want to learn more about Azure Firewall, then follow the link on your screen, which will be available in the description section of this video. Next question. There are 4 options available, and you need to choose which of them is an Apache Spark-based analytics service. Your options are Azure Data Factory, Azure DevOps, Azure Databricks, Azure Synapse Analytics. And the correct answer is Azure Databricks. It is a fast, easy, and collaborative Apache Spark-based big data analytics service designed for data science and data engineering. It allows you to seamlessly integrate with open source libraries, spin up clusters, and build quickly in a fully managed Apache Spark environment with the global scale and availability of Azure. Question number 118. Which Azure service provides a set of version control tools to manage code? Your options are Azure Repos, Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Storage, Azure DevTest Labs. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Repos. Azure Repos is a set of version control tools that you can use to manage your code. Azure Repos provide 2 types of version control. The first one is Git-based, which is a distributed version control, and the other one is Team Foundation version control, which is a centralized version control. Let's look at next question. You have a virtual machine named VM1 that runs Windows Server 2019. VM1 is in Australia East Azure region. Which Azure service should you use from the Azure portal to view service failure notifications that can affect the availability of VM1? Your options are Azure Virtual Machines, Azure Service Fabric, Azure Monitor, Azure Advisor. And the correct answer here is Azure Monitor. It is a comprehensive monitoring solution for collecting, analyzing, and responding to telemetry from your cloud and on-premise environments. You can use Azure Monitor to maximize the availability and performance of your application and services. Question number 120 of the series. Which Azure storage access tier has the highest storage costs but the lowest access costs? Your options are hot tier, cool tier, cold tier, archive tier. And the correct answer is hot tier. There will be a lot of questions around storage in this part of the series, and you can expect to get some storage related questions in exam as well. So go through the link on your screen to understand about storage tiers in more details. If you have any questions around storage tiers, post them in the comment section and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Question number 121 of the series. Again, you have 4 options and you need to choose one of them, which provides in-depth information about security, privacy, compliance offering, policies, and features across Microsoft Cloud products. Your options are Microsoft Trust Center, Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal, Microsoft 365 Defender Portal, Microsoft Defender for Cloud in Azure Portal. And the correct answer in this case is Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. You might see different variations of this question on different places on internet. However, you just need to make sure that some of the services have their name changed recently, and this is the correct option and the recent name of the service, which is the right answer. Let's move to question number 122 of the series. Premium Blob storage accounts only support which of the following redundancy? Your options are Zero Zone Redundant Storage, Zero Redundant Storage, Locally Redundant Storage, and Zone Redundant Storage. The correct answer is option D, Zone Redundant Storage. ZRS for premium Blob accounts is available in a subset of Azure regions. Now there are two links on your screen to justify the answer that I have chosen. Go through that link and read about zone redundant storage in more detail. Question number 123 of the series. Which of the following can be used to enable just-in-time, or we also call it JIT VM access? Your options are Azure Firewall, Azure Bastion, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Azure Front Door. And the correct answer in this case is option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You can use Microsoft Defender for Cloud's just-in-time access to protect your Azure virtual machines from unauthorized network access. Many times, firewalls contain allow rules that leave your VMs vulnerable to attack. JIT lets you allow access to your VMs only when the access is needed. Hence the name just-in-time access. And it allows the access on the ports needed and for the period of time the access is needed. Question number 124. What is the minimum recommended data retention period for archive access tier of Azure storage? Your options are 30, 60, 90, and 180. And the correct answer is 180. 180 days is the minimum recommended data retention period for archive access tier of Azure storage. Let's look at one more variation of this type of the question. What is the minimum recommended data retention period for cool access tier of Azure storage? Your options are 15, 30, 60, 90. In previous question, we were talking about archive access tier of Azure storage. And in this question, we are talking about cool access tier of the storage. And the correct answer is 30 days. So for archive tier, the minimum retention data period is 180 days. And for cool access tier, the minimum retention period is 30 days. Which service provides network traffic filtering across multiple Azure subscriptions and virtual networks? Your options are an application security group, a network security group, Azure Key Vault, Azure Firewall. The correct answer in this case is option D, Azure Firewall. This is one of the questions where other option, which is network security group, might sound correct to many of you. But remember, network security groups provide distributed network layer traffic filtering to limit traffic to resources within virtual networks in each subscription. Whereas Azure Firewall is a fully stateful centralized network firewall as a service, which provides network and application level protection across different subscriptions and virtual networks, which is what is being asked in this question, hence making Azure Firewall as the correct answer. Next question. You plan to extend your company's network to Azure. The network contains a VPN appliance that uses an IP address of 131.107.200.1. You need to create an Azure resource that identifies the VPN appliance. Which Azure resource should you create? Your options are local network gateway, application network gateway, virtual network gateways, load balancers. You need to read the words carefully here as the question is a bit tricky. VPN appliances hosted on-premise, and you need to create an Azure resource which identifies this appliance as you are extending your on-prem network to Azure. So the correct answer here is local network gateway. A local network gateway is a specific object that represents your on-premise location, which is your site for routing purposes. You give the site a name by which Azure can refer to it. Then you specify the IP address of the on-premise VPN device, which is VPN appliance in this case, to which you will create a connection. Question number 128 of the series. You are developing a web application that will be hosted on virtual machines. You start deploying virtual machines for hosting the application. You are deploying Azure virtual machines for hosting the application. Where in Azure portal will you be notified when the deployment of virtual machines is complete. Your options are navigate section, activity log section, notification section, view account section. The correct answer in this case is option C, notifications section. As you can see a screenshot on the screen right now, which I took after creating a sample virtual machines for this demonstration. The bell icon is selected, which is the notification section, and you can see the message is being displayed here that the deployment is succeeded, and you have the link to browse to the resource group or to the individual resource as well. Let's move to next question of the series. Azure SQL database allows user to perform patch management of database software. You need to choose whether this statement is right or wrong. No, the statement is incorrect. Azure SQL database is an always up-to-date, fully managed relational database service built for the cloud. It is a PaaS offering. So you don't have access to underlying infrastructure. Whenever there is any service which is platform as a service, you don't have access to the underlying infrastructure to manage it, and that is all managed by Azure. So this is not the correct statement. I already have a detailed video around the differences between infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. If you are someone who is willing to understand these concepts in more detail, then I would highly recommend you to go through the video and post any doubts which you have in the comment section, and I'll be happy to answer them as soon as possible. Now let's have another yes or no question. Azure DevOps services allow developers to deploy or update applications to Azure using continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines. Yes, this statement is correct. Azure Pipelines, which is a part of Azure DevOps service, lets you continuously build, test, and deploy to any platform and cloud. You can build, test, and deploy Node.js, Python, Java, PHP, .NET, Android, or even iOS apps and run them in parallel on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows operating system. Question number 131 of the series. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. In the answer area, you have a statement, an organization that hosts its infrastructure, then dash, no longer requires a data center. Now you need to choose between in a private cloud, in a hybrid cloud, in a public cloud, on a Hyper-V host. So basically you need to choose a cloud hosting option in which the organization doesn't require a data center. So the correct answer in this case is public cloud. The other three options will still require you to manage your own data center in some or the other form. So for example, if you are talking about a private cloud, obviously private cloud is something which is hosted in a vendor's data center or your own data center, but still there is a data center. And in a hybrid cloud is again a combination of public cloud and your own data center or a private cloud. So again, your data center is involved, whereas public cloud is cloud native. So you don't need to manage your own data center. And a Hyper-V host again is an on-premise option. So you have to manage your data center. Let's move to question number 132. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. So let's start with first statement. Data transfers between Azure services located in different Azure regions is always free. No, the statement is incorrect. You are charged when you are moving data from one region to another region. Now on your screen, you can see a snippet from Microsoft website, which is telling about the different prices from transferring data from one region to another region. Prices vary whether you are doing an intercontinental data transfer or you are doing an intracontinental data transfer. But the bottom line is any transfer between regions is chargeable. Let's look at next statement. North America is represented by a single Azure region. No, This statement is again incorrect. North America has several Azure regions, including West US, Central US, South Central US, East US, and Canada East. Now, the third statement is every Azure region has multiple data centers. Yes, this statement is correct. Each Azure region features data centers deployed with a latency-defined parameter. They are connected through a dedicated regional low-latency network. This design ensures that Azure services within any region offer the best possible performance and security. Next question. Again, to complete a sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Requiring a user to enter a password and answer a security question when signing into Azure Active Directory is an example of. Your options are managed identities, multi-factor authentication, role-based access control, business to customer identity services, which is B2C. So the correct answer is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is a process in which users are prompted during the sign-in process for an additional form of identification, such as code on their cell phone or a fingerprint scan. Question number 134. Now you have a statement. Azure Key Vault is used to store app secrets, and the instructions are review the underlying text. If it makes the statement correct, select no changes needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. Your options are no changes needed, Azure Security Center, Azure Repos, Azure Blob Storage. Yes, the statement is correct. So option A, no changes needed, is the right answer. Azure Key Vault is a cloud service for securely storing and accessing secrets. A secret is anything that you want to tightly control access to, such as API keys, passwords, certificates, or even cryptographic keys. Key Vault service supports two types of containers, vaults and managed hardware security module, HSM pools. Moving on to question number 135. Which of the following can be used to view which user turned off a specific virtual machine during the last 14 days? Your options are Azure Event Hubs, Azure Activity Log, Azure Access Control, IAM, Azure Service Health. The correct answer in this case is option B, Azure Activity Log. Activity Monitor Log is a platform log in Azure that provides insight into subscription level events. The activity log includes information like when a resource is modified or a virtual machine is started. There is a similar event that is being talked about in this question when a virtual machine is turned off. You can view the activity log in the Azure portal or retrieve entries with PowerShell and the Azure CLI as well. So you do have option to access the activity logs through portal, which is GUI, or you can use CLI commands or PowerShell as well. Question number 136. What is used to grant permission to Azure Virtual Desktop resources? Your options are resource groups, application security groups, tags, role-based access control, RBAC roles. The correct answer in this case is option D, RBAC roles. Azure Virtual Desktop uses Azure RBAC to control access to resources. There are a number of built-in roles for use with Azure Virtual Desktop, which is a collection of permissions. You assign roles to users and admins, and these roles give permission to carry out certain tasks. You can refer to the link on your screen if you would like to understand more about RBAC roles and implement in your actual environments as well. Next question. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. So you have four options: Azure Total Cost of Ownership Calculator, which is TCO calculator, Azure Migrate, Server Assessment Tool, Azure Pricing Calculator, Database Migration Assistant. Now the statement is Dash can calculate cost savings due to reduced electricity consumption as a result of migrating on-premise Microsoft SQL servers to Azure? The correct answer in this case is Azure TCO calculator, total cost of ownership calculator. It is used to estimate the cost savings you can achieve by migrating your application workloads to Microsoft Azure. Question number 138 of the series. Which of the following runs application code in Azure without requiring a server? So here we are talking about serverless computing. Your options are Azure Functions, an Azure DevOps pipeline, an Azure Resource Manager template, Azure Application Gateway. So as soon as we talk about serverless computing, what should come in your mind? Azure Functions. It is a serverless solution that allows you to write less code, maintain less infrastructure, and save on costs. Instead of worrying about deploying and maintaining servers, the cloud infrastructure provides all the up-to-date resources needed to keep your applications running. Azure Functions is one of the hot services in Azure. So if you are someone who is keen on exploring serverless computing, go ahead and check out the link on the screen to read more about Azure Functions. Let's look at question number 14th of the series. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. Azure Resource Manager templates use the, we are talking about ARM templates, and we need to choose what is the format of the ARM templates. Your options are CSV format, JSON format, HTML format, XML format. The correct answer is JSON format. ARM template is a JavaScript object notification, which is also called as JSON file, that defines the infrastructure and configuration for your project. The template uses declarative syntax, which lets you state what you intend to deploy without having to write the sequence of programming commands to create it. In the template, you specify the resources to deploy and the properties for those resources. Next question of the series. If an Azure virtual machine has a status of stopped or deallocated, then you will continue to pay for which of the following? Your options are storage, compute capacity, networking, input-output operations. When your VM is in deallocated state and you have any attached storage, you will be incurring the charge for that. Now, if you have a premium disk, you will incur charge for entirety of the volume size used or unused. But if you have a standard storage, you will only incur charge for the used space. What do you need to create before you create a new file share from the Azure portal? Your options are Azure Data Box, Resource Group, Azure Migrate, Storage Account. The correct answer in this case is Storage Account. Before you can work with an Azure file share, you must create an Azure storage account. A storage account is a shared pool of storage in which you can deploy an Azure file share or other storage resources such as blobs or queues. A storage account can contain an unlimited number of shares. A share can store an unlimited number of files up to the capacity limits of the storage account. Question number 142 of the series. You have an Azure web app. You need to manage the settings of the web app from an iPhone. What are two Azure management tools that you can use? You need to choose two options. Your options are Azure Portal, Windows PowerShell, Azure Storage Explorer, Azure Cloud Shell, Azure CLI. And the right answers in this case are option A and option D, Azure Portal and Azure Cloud Shell. Azure Portal is a web-based portal for managing Azure. Being web-based, you can use Azure Portal on an iPhone because it has a web browser. Similarly, Azure Cloud Shell is a web-based command line for managing Azure. You access the Azure Cloud Shell from the Azure Portal. Again, being web-based, you can access it from an iPhone. Let's now look at why other options are not correct. Windows PowerShell can be installed on Mac OS, but it cannot be installed on an iPhone, making it an incorrect choice. Azure Storage Explorer is not used to manage Azure web apps, so this is an irrelevant option here. Azure CLI can be installed on macOS, but again, it cannot be installed on an iPhone, making it an incorrect choice here. Question number 143 of the series. You need to configure an Azure solution that meets the following requirements. Now, the requirements are secure websites from attacks, generates reports that contain details of attempted attacks. What should you include in the solution? Your options are DDoS protection, Azure firewall, network security group, Azure information protection. And the correct answer in this case is option A, DDoS protection. A DDoS attack attempts to exhaust an application's resources, making the application unavailable to legitimate users. DDoS attacks can be targeted at any endpoint that is publicly reachable through the internet. Now, if you are someone who is interested in reading more about DDoS protection in Azure, then I would highly suggest you to go through the link on your screen to understand this in more details. If you have any questions, post them in the comment section and I'll attend them as soon as possible. Let's look at next question. Now you need to match the cloud service models to the appropriate offerings. To answer, just drag the appropriate model from the column on the left to its offering on the right. Each model can be used once, more than once, or not at all. Now the models are infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And the three services that are being talked about here are Azure App Service, Azure Virtual Machines, and Microsoft Dynamics 365. The correct answer in this case is Azure App Service is an example of platform as a service, Azure Virtual Machine is an example of infrastructure as a service, and Microsoft Dynamics 365 is an example of software as a service. If you are not sure of the difference between these three types of cloud computing service models, then I already have a detailed video explaining all of them. Check that out, as there can be multiple questions around cloud computing service models in the exam. Question number 145. You can use Azure Active Directory to set permissions by dividing users into groups. You need to tell whether this statement is right or wrong. And this statement is correct. Azure Active Directory provides several ways to manage access to resources, applications, and tasks. With Azure AD groups, you can grant access and permissions to a group of users instead of for each individual users. Limiting access to Azure AD resources to only those users who need access is one of the core security principles of Zero Trust. So you need to understand here we are talking about Zero Trust, and Azure AD plays a big role in achieving that. Next question. Azure Logic Apps is a serverless solution for running code. Again, you need to tell whether this statement is right or wrong. And this statement is not correct. Azure Logic Apps is not a code execution solution like Azure Functions. If the question was Azure Functions is a serverless solution for running code, then you would have chosen yes. So there can be variation of this question. Now, Azure Logic Apps is a cloud platform where you can create and run automated workflows with little to no code. By using the visual designer and selecting from pre-built operations, you can quickly build a workflow that integrates and manages your apps, data, services, and systems. Next question of the series. You need to manage containers. Which of the two Azure services can you use? Your options are Azure Container Instances, Azure Virtual Machines, Azure Kubernetes Service, Azure Virtual Desktop, Azure Functions. And the correct answer in this case is option A and option C, Azure Container Services and Azure Kubernetes Service. Azure Container Instances provide a fast and simple way to run containers in Azure without having to manage virtual machines or worry about infrastructure. Azure Container Instances, also short form as ACI, is a fully managed service that makes it easy to run containers, and you can easily and quickly deploy containers to Azure with a single command. On the other hand, Azure Kubernetes Service, also called as AKS, is a managed Kubernetes service that makes it easy to deploy, manage, and scale containerized applications in Azure. With AKS, you can quickly and easily create and manage a fully managed Kubernetes cluster in Azure, which provides a scalable and highly available platform for running containers. Good thing about AKS is it also integrates with other Azure services to provide a complete solution for managing containers in Azure. Next question. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. After you create a virtual machine, you need to modify dash to allow connections to TCP port 8080 on the virtual machine. Your options are network security group, route table, virtual network gateway, or virtual network. And the correct answer in this case is network security group. You can use an Azure network security group to filter network traffic between Azure resources in a Azure virtual network. A network security group contains security rules that allow or deny inbound network traffic to or outbound network traffic from several types of Azure resources. For each rule, you can specify source and destination, port, and protocol. There are going to be many questions around network security groups in the exam. So go through the link on your screen to understand network security group in detail and how they differ from different network components in Azure. Question number 149 of the series. You need to purchase a third-party virtual security appliance that you will deploy to an Azure subscription. What should you use? Your options are Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Azure Subscriptions, Microsoft Store, or Azure Marketplace. The correct answer in this case is Azure Marketplace. There are many keywords in this question. You need to purchase a third-party virtual security appliance. So if you are trying to purchase anything in Azure, then the first place that you look for is Azure Marketplace. You can access enhanced network security features provided by a virtual security appliance by using an Azure partner solution. You can find the most current Azure partner network security solutions by visiting the Azure Marketplace and searching for security and network security. Question number 150. An Azure service is no longer updated with new features after it becomes generally available. You need to tell whether this statement is right or wrong. This statement is incorrect. New features can be added to an Azure service after it becomes generally available, and they are usually released as updates. Each Azure service is constantly evolving, and new functions are added as and when needed. Another question related to public preview or private or generally available things. When you create Azure resource for a service in public preview, you must recreate the resources once the service becomes generally available. You need to tell whether this statement is right or wrong. No, this statement is also incorrect. You don't need to recreate them. In most cases, the only thing that changes is you get formal support and defined SLAs when the service becomes generally available, also referenced as GA. Next question. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. Now you have four options, which is Azure Reserved Virtual Machine Instances, Azure Container Instances, Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets, Azure Spot Virtual Machine Instances. Which of the following provides access to Azure compute capacity at deep discounts? And the correct answer in this case is Azure Spot Virtual Machine Instances. They provide access to unused Azure compute capacity at deep discounts. Spot VMs offer the same characteristic as a pay-as-you-go virtual machine, the difference being pricing and evictions. Spot VMs can be evicted at any time if Azure needs capacity. So it is highly recommended whenever you are using spot virtual machines, you don't put production workloads on them, because as you would have just listened, they can be evicted at any time whenever Azure needs capacity. The only drawback is they can go anytime, but then you get a lot of discounts when you're using these virtual machines as well. So probably you can put your non-critical workloads on them, which can handle interruptions. Question number 153. Your company has multiple offices. You plan to generate several billing reports from the Azure portal. Each report will contain the Azure resource utilization of each office. Which Azure Resource Manager feature should you use before you generate the reports? Your options are policies, tags, logs, templates. And the correct answer in this case is option B, tags. You can use tags to group your billing data. If you are running multiple VMs for different organizations, for example, use the tags to group usage by cost center. You can also use tags to categorize costs by runtime environment, such as billing users for VMs running in the production environment. So there can be different use cases for tags, and tags are used a lot to segregate billing. There is a link on your screen now, which you can use to understand how tags and billing work together. Let's move to next question. At which OSI layer does ExpressRoute operate? Your options are layer 2, layer 3, layer 5, layer 7. And the correct answer in this case is layer 3. It operates at network layer, which is layer 3 of OSI model.
If you are enjoying the content, friends, please hit the like button and subscribe the channel. Remember, if you would like to get access to the full set of questions in PDF format for quick revisions and offline study, then you can gain access to it by joining the channel as a gold member. And then you just need to email me at devopshub2023@gmail.com requesting your PDF copy. Let's now get back to the further questions of this video.
Next question. Which node in the Azure portal should you use to assign a user the reader role for a resource group? Now you have two screenshots on your screen from a resource group section, and you need to determine which section would you use when you want to assign a user the reader role for a resource group. And the correct answer in this case is access control. Usually, whenever you are doing anything which is related to access of the users or providing access to any resource, you play around in the access control IAM section of resource group or any other resource which you are playing around with. Our company is planning to deploy resources to Azure. They want to have the ability to manage user access to resources across multiple subscriptions. Which of the following can help you achieve this requirement? Your options are Azure policies, resource groups, Azure app service, management groups. Management group, which is at the top of hierarchy in Azure, helps you manage access policy and compliance for multiple subscriptions. All subscriptions in a management group inherit the conditions that are applied to the management group. A management group can be nested. Some basic examples of using multiple management groups can be production versus non-production workloads, internal services versus external services. In the screenshot, you can see we have root management group, under which we have some management groups for different departments, and then some subscriptions are also there in the first level of hierarchy, and the nesting of management group continues. If you are someone who is willing to understand more about hierarchy in Azure, what are management groups, what are subscriptions, then I already have a detailed video around this. Hop onto my channel and have a look at the video. Let's look at next question. Which of the following does a customer provide in a software as a service or SaaS model? Your options are application data, compute resources, application software, data storage. And the correct answer in this case is option A, application data. With SaaS, cloud providers host and manage the software application and underlying infrastructure. And they also handle any maintenance like software upgrades and security patching. Users connect to the application over internet, usually with a web browser on their phone, tablet, or PC. Question number 158 of the series. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Now you have a statement here. Your Azure trial account expired last week. You are now unable to. Then you have four options. Basically, your Azure trial account has expired last week and you need to determine which of the listed activities you won't be able to perform. And the activities are access the Azure portal, create additional Azure Active Directory user accounts, access your data stored in Azure, start an existing Azure virtual machine. And the correct answer in this case would be start an Azure virtual machine. You won't be able to start an Azure virtual machine if your Azure trial account has expired. And the reason is a stopped or deallocated VM is offline and not mounted on an Azure host server. So when you try to start it, the VM mounts it on a host server before the VM starts. Now, as soon as the VM is mounted, it becomes chargeable. This is the reason why you are not able to start a VM after a trial has expired. Next question. You have an Azure environment that contains 10 virtual networks and 100 virtual machines. You need to limit the amount of inbound traffic to all the Azure virtual networks. What should you create? 10 virtual network gateways, 1 network security group, 10 Azure ExpressRoute circuits, 1 Azure firewall. Let's look at all options and see which one is right. So the first option is virtual network gateways. Now, virtual network gateways are used for connecting on-premise networks to Azure Virtual Network or for creating a site-to-site VPN connection. They do not provide inbound network traffic filtering or limiting for virtual networks, so this is not a correct option. The second option, network security groups, are used to control network traffic by defining inbound and outbound security rules. While NSGs can provide inbound traffic filtering for virtual machines, they do not directly limit the amount of inbound traffic to the entire virtual network, making this an incorrect choice. Now, the third option, Azure ExpressRoute, they are dedicated private connections between your on-premise network and Azure. They are used for providing reliable and high bandwidth connectivity, but do not specifically address the need to limit inbound traffic to virtual networks, which makes it an incorrect choice, which leaves us with only one option, that is option D, Azure Firewall, making it the correct choice. Now, Azure Firewall is a cloud-native network security service that can provide centralized inbound and outbound traffic filtering and network address translation capabilities for multiple virtual networks. By deploying one Azure firewall, you can configure and enforce specific rules to restrict the amount of inbound traffic to all your virtual networks. Question number 160 of the series. You have an accounting application named App1 that uses a legacy database. You plan to move App1 to the cloud. Which service model should you use? Your options are software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service. Now, given that you have a legacy database and wish to migrate it along with the application without significant changes, infrastructure as a service would be the most suitable service model here. I already have a detailed video around infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, and what are the differences in each of them. If you are interested in learning more about them, then again, go to the Azure Fundamental videos on my channel. Let's look at next question of the series. You need to collect and automatically analyze security events from Azure Active Directory. What should you use? Your options are Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure AD Connect, Azure Key Vault, Microsoft Sentinel. And the correct answer in this case is Microsoft Sentinel. It was formerly called as Azure Sentinel. It is a cloud-native security information and event management solution offered by Microsoft. It is specifically designed to provide intelligent security analytics and threat intelligence across your organization's entire hybrid infrastructure, including Azure AD. Microsoft Sentinel can collect security events, logs, and data from various sources, including Azure Active Directory. And it provides advanced security analysis, threat detection, and response capabilities. Next question. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Now, this statement is Azure Distributed Denial of Service Protection, DDoS protection, is an example of a protection mechanism implemented at. So basically, the question is about implementation of distributed denial of service protection, at which layer of OSI model it is implemented. Now, your options are application layer, compute layer, network layer, parameter layer. And the correct answer in this case is network layer. Question number 163. A support engineer plans to perform several Azure management tasks by using the Azure CLI. You install the CLI on a computer. You need to tell the support engineer which tools to use to run the CLI. Which two tools should you instruct the support engineer to use? Your options are Command Prompt, Windows Defender Firewall, Windows PowerShell, Azure Resource Explorer, Network and Sharing Center. And the correct answers in this case are option A and option C, Command Prompt and Windows PowerShell. Now, Command Prompt, or referred to as cmd.exe, as you would already know, is a command line interpreter in the Windows operating system. It provides a text-based interface for executing commands, including the Azure CLI commands. The support engineer can launch the command prompt and run the Azure CLI commands directly. And the second correct option, Windows PowerShell, is a powerful scripting environment that enables automation and task management. It provides a command line shell and a scripting language. The support engineer can again open Windows PowerShell and use it to execute Azure CLI commands. Let's look at question 164 of the series. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. So the first statement is, a DNS server that runs on an Azure virtual machine is an example of platform as a service. No, the statement is incorrect. A DNS server running on an Azure virtual machine is an example of infrastructure as a service. In infrastructure as a service, you have control over the virtual infrastructure where you manage the operating system, runtime environment, and applications running on the VM. In this case, you would deploy and configure a virtual machine on Azure to run the DNS server software, taking responsibility for the installation, maintenance, and management of the server. Now, the next statement is, Microsoft Intune is an example of software as a service. Yes, this statement is correct. As a SaaS offering, Microsoft Intune is delivered over the internet as a subscription-based service. Users can access and use Intune through a web portal or dedicated applications without the need for on-premise infrastructure or software installation. The next statement is, Azure Files is an example of infrastructure as a service. No, this statement is incorrect. Azure Files is not an example of infrastructure as a service, but rather a specific service offered by Microsoft Azure that falls under the category of platform as a service. Azure Files is a cloud-based file sharing service that allows you to create and manage file shares in the cloud. It provides a fully managed file storage solution that can be accessed from multiple virtual machines or services within Azure or even from an on-premise environment. So folks, you would have already seen that there are few questions around different type of these offerings, whether it is a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service or software as a service. So it is highly recommended you know what these cloud computing models are and you understand them in detail. So go through my video as you can expect to see some questions around this in the exam. Let's look at question 165 of the series. Which of the following Azure service should you use to store certificates? Your options are Azure Key Vault, Azure Information Protection, Azure Storage Account, Azure Security Center. And the Azure service that you should use to store certificates is Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is a cloud-based service provided by Microsoft that is specifically designed for securely storing and managing cryptographic keys, secrets, certificates, and other sensitive information. It provides a central repository for storing certificates and offers features such as secure key management, policy-based access control, and integration with other Azure services. Now let's look at the purpose of other service and why they were not correct. Azure Information Protection is a service that focuses on protecting and classifying sensitive documents and emails rather than storing certificates. Now option C, Azure Storage Account, is a service used for storing and accessing various types of data, including blobs, files, tables, and queues. While it can be used for storing files and data, it is not designed specifically for certificate storage and management. Now, the last option, Azure Security Center, is a service that provides advanced threat protection for cloud workloads. While it offers security monitoring and recommendations, it is not intended for certificate storage. Next question. A company is planning on using their Microsoft Azure free account for hosting production-based resources. Does the Azure free account allow you to host production-based resources? You need to choose between yes or no. So the company is trying to use their free Microsoft Azure account to host production-based workloads. Though this is not a recommended practice, but you are allowed to do it. The Azure free account provides access to all Azure services and does not block customers from building their ideas into production. The Azure free account includes certain type of specific services and certain amounts of those services for free. But as I said, you can do it, but it is not recommended that you should be doing it. Let's look at another yes or no statement. A company wants to migrate some scripts to Microsoft Azure. They want to make use of the serverless features available in Azure. They decide to make use of Azure functions. Would this meet the requirement? You need to choose between yes or no. Yes, this would meet the requirement. Making use of Azure function would meet the requirement of utilizing serverless features available in Azure for migrating scripts. Now, by leveraging them, obviously you can migrate your scripts to Azure and take advantage of serverless architecture, which provides benefits such as automatic scaling, pay-per-use pricing, and simplified management. With Azure functions, you only pay for the actual execution time of your code, making it a cost-effective option for running scripts and small workloads. Question number 168 of the series. Which of the following are considered vertical scaling in a cloud environment? Your options are provision additional containers, increase the CPU and RAM of a virtual machine, increase the number of virtual machines, provision an additional Azure dedicated host. And the correct answer in this case is increase the CPU and RAM of the virtual machine, which is an example of vertical scaling. Now, vertical scaling, also known as scaling up or scaling vertically, refers to increasing the resources such as CPU, RAM, storage of an individual virtual machines or server to handle increased workloads or demands. It involves upgrading the capacity of a single instance rather than adding more instances. Now, option C, increasing the number of virtual machines, is an example of horizontal scaling. Go through the link on your screen to understand differences between horizontal and vertical scaling, as you can get some questions around this in exam. They are also referred to as scale up or scale down. So go through the link to understand these in more details. The question can talk about horizontal and vertical scaling, or it can even talk about scaling up or scaling down as well. Question number 169 of the series. A company wants to host a set of tables in Microsoft Azure. They want absolutely zero administration of the underlying infrastructure and low latency access to data. You recommend using the Azure Cosmos DB. Would this meet the requirement? You need to choose between yes or no. Yes, this will definitely meet the requirement. Azure Cosmos DB handles the underlying infrastructure management tasks such as provisioning, patching, and backups on behalf of the user. This allows developers and businesses to focus on building applications and accessing data without worrying about managing servers or infrastructure. Next question. A company is planning on setting up a solution in Microsoft Azure, and one of the key requirements is a tool that provides guidance and recommendations to improve an Azure environment. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Your options are Azure Cognitive Services, Azure DevOps, Azure Application Insights, Azure Advisor. For the requirement of a tool that provides guidance and recommendations to improve an Azure environment, the best suited option would be Azure Advisor. It is a built-in Azure service that offers intelligent recommendations to optimize your Azure services or Azure resources. It provides proactive guidance across various areas, including cost optimization, performance, high availability, security, and operational excellence.
Your development team needs to maintain multiple versions of files in Azure Blob storage for auditing purposes. Which Azure feature can help you achieve file versioning? Your options are Azure Blob versioning, Azure Blob snapshots, Azure Blob lifecycle management, Azure Blob soft delete. The feature that helps you achieve file versioning in Azure Blob storage is Azure Blob versioning. Azure Blob versioning allows you to preserve and access previous versions of your Blob data, providing a way to maintain and audit changes over time. Question number 172 of the series. You need to identify the type of failure for which an Azure availability zone can be used to protect access to Azure services. What should you identify? Your options are an Azure region failure, physical server failure, a storage failure, and Azure data center failure. And the correct answer here would be option D, Azure data center failure. Azure availability zones are designed to provide high availability and redundancy within a region, specifically protecting against failure at the data center level, which is what is being talked about here in this question. This means that if one data center within a region experiences any issue or failure, services can continue to operate from another availability zone within the same region, ensuring the availability and resilience of your Azure services. Next question. To reduce costs, your organization wants to automatically shut down VMs during non-business hours and start them up again in the morning. What Azure service should you configure for this purpose? Your options are Azure Policy, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Monitor, Azure Automation. To automatically shut down VMs during non-business hours and start them up again in the morning in Azure, you should configure Azure Automation. Azure Automation is a service that allows you to create, schedule, and automate various tasks and processes within your Azure environment. You can use Azure Automation to create runbooks, which are sets of scripts that can be executed on a schedule or in response to specific events. In this case, you can create a runbook that shutdowns your VMs during non-business hours and another runbook to start them up in the morning, and then schedule these runbooks to run at the desired times. Question number 174. Your organization requires detailed auditing of who accesses and modifies data in Azure Blob storage. Which Azure feature or service provides access logs and audit trails? The options are Azure Security Center, Azure Monitor, Azure Blob Storage Analytics, Azure Sentinel. The correct answer here would be option C, Azure Blob Storage Analytics. Azure Blob Storage Analytics includes the capability to track and log various types of storage operations and access to your blob data. You can configure it to capture metrics and logging data, including details of who accessed or modified data, when the access or modification occurred, and more. These logs can be useful for auditing and compliance purposes, helping you monitor and understand the activities related to your blob storage. Let's look at next question. Your company plans to migrate to Azure, and the company has several departments. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by a department administrator. What are two possible techniques to segment Azure resources for the departments? Now you need to choose two options here. And the given options are multiple Azure Active Directory directories, multiple subscriptions, multiple resource groups, multiple regions. To segment Azure for different departments, you can use multiple subscriptions and multiple resource groups. Each department can have its own subscription to isolate resources and billing, and within each subscription, you can further organize resources using different resource groups to manage and control access and permissions. Now let's look at why other options are not right. Multiple Azure Active Directory directories and multiple regions may not be necessary for segmentation in this context, although they can be used for other purposes such as identity management and geographic redundancy. Next question. You need to identify which blades in the Azure portal must be used to perform the following tasks. Now the tasks are view security recommendations, monitor the health of Azure services. Which blade should you identify for each task? To answer, you need to select the appropriate options from the options mentioned below. Now for view security recommendations and monitor the health of Azure services, the blades that are given are monitor, subscription, marketplace, and advisor. So to view the security recommendations, the blade you would use is advisor. The advisor blade provides insights and recommendations for various aspects of your Azure resources, including security recommendations. It's where you can view and access security-related recommendations and guidance. Now, to monitor the health of Azure resources, the blade that you will use is monitor. The monitor blade provides tools and insights for monitoring the health and performance of Azure services and resources. You can use Azure Monitor and related features to track the health and performance metrics of your Azure environment. Let's now look at some yes or no questions, as you will see few of these questions in your exam as well. And the first one of them is, Azure DevOps service includes a Git repository for developers to store code. So basically what's happening here is you are given a statement related to Azure DevOps services and you need to tell whether that statement is right or wrong. So what they are asking is, Azure DevOps service includes a Git repository for developers to store code. Yes, that's correct. The Azure DevOps service includes a Git repository where developers can store and manage their code. Azure DevOps services provides version control and source code management capabilities through Git. allowing teams to collaborate on code development and track changes effectively. Let's look at next statement. If you implement the security recommendation provided by Azure Advisor, your company's secure score will increase. You need to tell whether this statement is right or wrong. Yes, this statement is again correct. If you implement the security recommendations provided by Azure Advisor, your company's secure score in Azure will typically increase. Azure Advisor offers recommendations and best practices to improve the security, performance, and reliability of your Azure resources. Following these recommendations can enhance the overall security posture of your Azure environment, which often leads to an increased secure score. Let's look at next statement. An Azure reservation is used to reserve server capacity at a specific data center. No, this statement is incorrect. Azure reservation is not used to reserve server capacity at a specific data center. They are used to reserve and prepay for certain Azure resources or services over a specific term, such as virtual machines, databases, or other services. However, they do not specify the location or data center where the resources will be provisioned. The allocation of resources is managed by Azure, and the resources may be deployed in any of the Azure available data center based on factors like availability, resource availability, and region selection. So folks, if you have any doubts till now, please don't hesitate to post them in the comments section, and we will get back to you with necessary answers. If we are not able to get back to you, then comment section is a very good place to interact with the community and help each other grow. Let's look at next question. Who should take the lead in developing and implementing a disaster recovery plan for applications running on Azure virtual machines? Your options are Microsoft Azure, customer, third-party provider, Azure Site Recovery Service. The customer is responsible for developing and implementing a disaster recovery plan for their application on Azure VMs. So the correct answer is option B, customer. Let's look at question 181 of the series. Your company stores sensitive customer data in Azure. Which Azure service helps you automatically classify and label data based on its sensitivity to enforce data protection policies? Your options are Azure Purview, Azure Monitor, Azure Policy, Azure Key Vault. The Azure service that helps you automatically classify and label data based on its sensitivity to enforce data protection policy is Azure Purview, which is option A here. Azure Purview is a data governance service that provides capabilities for discovering, classifying, and cataloging data across your organization, including sensitive data, and then allows you to apply policies and manage access to the data based on its classification and sensitivity. Next question. A company needs to create around 50 customized virtual machines. Out of these, 20 are window-based virtual machines and 30 are Ubuntu machines. Which of the following would help reduce the administrative effort required to deploy the machines? Your options are Azure Web Apps, Azure Load Balancer, Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets, Azure Traffic Manager. And the correct answer here is option C, Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets. Also called as Azure VMS, is designed for deploying and managing a set of identical VMs which can be automatically scaled in or out based on demand. It's suitable for scenarios where you want to minimize administrative effort, ensure high availability, and maintain consistency across VM instances. Question number 183. Which of the following can be used to help you enforce resource tagging so you can manage billing? Choose two. You need to choose two options, and the question is asking about how can you enforce resource tagging so that you can manage billing. The options are Compliance Manager, Azure Service Help, Azure Policy, Azure Security Center, and Azure Management Groups. To enforce resource tagging and effectively manage billing in Azure, you can use either Azure Policy or Azure Management Groups. Azure Policy allows you to create and enforce policies that can require specific tags to be applied to resources. By defining tagging policies, you ensure that resources are consistently tagged with relevant metadata, making it easier to allocate cost and manage billing. When it comes to Azure Management Group, they allow you to organize your subscription into a hierarchy and apply policies at different levels, including the root level. You can use management groups to enforce tagging policies across multiple subscriptions, ensuring consistency in tagging for billing purposes. Folks, I already have a detailed video around policies and management groups, which are uploaded on the channel. If you are interested in knowing more about policy and management groups, go and check out those videos. Meanwhile, let's look at question number 184 of the series. A company wants to have an enterprise messaging solution integrated with their existing application hosted within Microsoft Azure. Which of the following should the company use for this requirement? Your options are API management services, logic apps, API connections, service bus. For an enterprise messaging solution integrated within an existing application hosted within Azure, Azure Service Bus is the most appropriate choice. Azure Service Bus is a cloud messaging service that enables reliable communication between applications and services. It provides features like publish, subscribe, queuing, and message routing, making it an ideal choice for building scalable and robust messaging solutions. Next question. In the shared responsibility model, who is typically responsible for conducting compliance audits to ensure that Azure services meet regulatory requirements? Your options are Microsoft Azure, customer, a third-party provider, or regulatory authorities. And the correct answer here is a third-party provider. Audits are often conducted by third-party providers or regulatory authorities, but the customer is responsible for ensuring their own compliance. Question number 186 of the series. Your company hosts an accounting application named App1 that is used by all the customers of the company. App1 has low usage during the first 2 weeks and very high usage during the last 2 weeks of each month. Which benefit of Azure Cloud supports cost management for this type of usage pattern? Your options are high latency, elasticity, high availability, load balancing. And the correct answer here is elasticity. Elasticity in cloud computing allows you to automatically scale your resources up or down based on demand. This elasticity feature helps in cost management because you only pay for the resources you actually use. When the usage is low, you are not paying for access capacity, and when it's high, you are scaling up effectively and efficiently to meet the demand without incurring unnecessary costs. Select the appropriate answer choice which completes the sentence correctly. An organization that hosts its infrastructure, and your options are in a private cloud, in a public cloud, in a hybrid cloud, on a Hyper-V host, no longer needs to maintain a data center. So basically the requirement is to get rid of maintenance of their own data center. And you can achieve this in a public cloud. Public cloud is a type of cloud computing model in which computing resources such as virtual machine, storage, and services are provided over the internet by a third-party cloud service provider like Azure, AWS, GCP, and many more. Question number 188. You plan to provision infrastructure as a service resources in Azure. Which of the following resource is an example of infrastructure as a service? Your options are Azure Virtual Machine, Azure Logic App, Azure Web App, Azure SQL Database. And the correct answer here is Azure Virtual Machine, which is an example of infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service provides virtualized computing resources over the internet. In the case of an Azure virtual machine, it allows you to provision virtualized hardware such as CPU, memory, storage, and networking, where you have full control over the operating system and software running on it. This means you are responsible for managing and maintaining the operating system and any applications installed on the virtual machine, similar to how you would manage physical servers in a traditional on-premise data center. So folks, if you don't know the differences between the different cloud computing models, which is infrastructure as a service or platform as a service and software as a service, then I already have a detailed video on this, which is available in the description section of this video. If you would like to know more about these cloud computing models, go through the video. Question number 189 of the series. You have an on-premise network that contains 100 servers and you need to recommend a solution that provides additional resources to your users. The solution must minimize capital and operational expenditure costs. What should you include in the recommendation? Your options are a private cloud, an additional data center, a complete migration to public cloud, a hybrid cloud. You need to add 100 more servers and you need to minimize capital and operational expenditure costs. So to minimize it, you would be using a hybrid cloud. All the other options will provide additional resources. However, the keyword here in this question is minimize capital and operational expenditure, which is minimum when moving to a hybrid cloud model. Question number 190 of the series. You are planning to deploy numerous web and database servers to Azure. You need to create a strategy that allows for connection types between the web and database servers to be controlled. You include use of network security groups in your strategy. Does the solution meet the goal? Yes, it meets the goal. NSGs allow you to define inbound and outbound rules to filter network traffic to and from Azure resources. This can help you enhance security and control access between your servers. However, the effectiveness of your strategy also depends on how you configure the NSGs and other security measures you put in place. Next question. You can use Service Trust Portal to download published audit reports and how Microsoft builds and operates its cloud services. Yes, this statement is also correct. You can use Service Trust Portal to download published audit reports and learn about how Microsoft builds and operates its cloud services. The Service Trust Portal is a Microsoft Azure website that provides various compliance and security related documentation, including audit reports, certifications, and other information related to Microsoft Cloud services. Within the Service Trust Portal, you can access information such as SOC, which is Service Organization Control Reports, ISO certifications, GDPR data protection impact assessments, and other compliance-related documents. These reports and certifications provide insight into Microsoft adherence to security and compliance standards and offer transparency regarding the security and privacy of their cloud services. Next question. You plan to migrate a web application to Azure and the web application is accessed by external users. You need to recommend a cloud deployment solution to minimize the amount of administrative effort used to manage the application. What should you include in the recommendation? Your options are software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or database as a service. To minimize administrative effort when migrating a web application to Azure, you should recommend using platform as a service. Because you are migrating an existing application, so you can't really use software as a service because the application already exists. Whereas with software as a service, you are using a service or application provided by a third-party vendor. So the most appropriate choice here is platform as a service. Next question. You have a resource group named RG1. You plan to create virtual networks and app services in RG1. You need to prevent the creation of virtual machines only in RG1. The solution must ensure that other objects can be created in RG1. What should you use? So you need to create virtual networks and app services in RG1, and you need to prevent the creation of virtual machines only in RG1. So what would you use? Your options are an Azure policy, a lock, an Azure role, a tag. To prevent creation of virtual machines, specifically in a resource group, you can use Azure policy. Azure policies are a type of resource governance mechanism that allows you to enforce specific rules and conditions on your Azure resources. In this case, you can create a custom Azure policy that denies the creation of virtual machines in the specified resource group, which is RG1 in the case. Next question. You have an Azure virtual network named VNet1 in a resource group named RG1. You assign an Azure policy specifying that virtual networks are not an allowed resource type in RG1. VNet1 is deleted automatically. Now the instructions are given that you need to select no change is needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. There is a underlying text here, and the underlying text is VNet1 is deleted automatically. So the question is talking about you create a Azure policy which will restrict the creation of virtual networks in RG1. But there is already a virtual network VNet1 existing in RG1. So what will happen to VNet1? And in the question, it specifies VNet1 is deleted automatically. You need to tell whether this is right or wrong. Now the options are no changes needed. VNet1 becomes a read-only object. VNet1 is moved automatically to another resource group. VNet1 continues to function normally. Assigning an Azure policy that specifies virtual networks are not allowed in the resource group does not automatically delete or move existing virtual networks. It only enforces the policy on new resource creations or updates. So basically, if you try to create a virtual network after the policy has been applied, you won't be able to do that, but there will be no change to any existing resource. So the correct answer is option D, VNet continues to function normally. Existing resources will continue to function normally as usual, as I said, until you manually delete them or policy has a remediation action to delete the non-compliant resources. So it depends how you have configured your policy. But generally, there is no remediation plan attached to it by default. So you will have to exclusively create a remediation plan to delete the non-compliant resources. What does the term Azure Policy Initiative refer to? Your options are collection of Azure policy definition assignments, group of role-based access controls, collection of policy definitions, group of Azure blueprint definitions. The term Azure Policy Initiative refers to collection of policy definitions. Azure Policy Initiative allows you to group multiple policy definitions together for easier management and enforcement. This can be particularly useful when you have a set of related policies that need to be applied to your Azure resources. By creating an initiative, you can enforce these policies as a group, making it more streamlined to ensure that your resources comply with a set of specific compliance and governance requirements. Let's look at next question. One of the benefits of Azure Synapse Analytics is that high availability is built into the platform. Then you have the instructions like one of the previous questions, review the underlying text. If it makes the statement correct, select no changes needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. Your options here are no changes needed, versioning, automatic scaling, and data compression. This statement is correct. Azure Synapse Analytics is a PaaS offering, which is platform as a service offering and is designed with high availability in mind. But its specific level of availability can depend on the configuration and redundancy choices you make while configuring it. The company is planning on setting up a solution in Microsoft Azure. The solution would have the following key requirement, and the requirement is provides a platform for creating workflows. Which of the following could be best suited for this requirement? Your options are Azure App Service, Azure Application Insights, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Databricks. For providing a platform for creating workflows, Azure Logic Apps is the best choice. Azure Logic Apps is a cloud service that allows you to create and run workflows that can integrate with various Azure services and external services. It's designed specifically for building workflows, automating tasks, and orchestrating processes. You can use it to create and manage complex workflows easily without the need of extensive coding. Question number 198 of the series. You plan to create an Azure virtual machine and you need to identify which storage service must be used to store the unmanaged data disks of the virtual machine. Which of the following would you identify? Your options are queues, file shares, tables, and containers. You should use containers for this use case. Specifically, you would use Azure Blob storage containers to store these unmanaged data disks. Blob storage is suitable for storing objects such as VHD files that are used as data disks for Azure virtual machines, which is what is asked in the question here. Next question. Which of the following is a repeatable set of governance tools that helps development teams quickly build and create new environments while adhering to organizational compliance to speed up development and deployment? Your options are CI/CD pipeline, Azure Blueprints, Azure DevOps, Azure Policy. The correct answer here would be Azure Blueprints. Azure Blueprints is a service in Microsoft Azure that allows organizations to define a repeatable set of governance tools, including role assignments, policies, and resource templates, to ensure that development teams can quickly build and create new environments while adhering to organizational compliance requirements. It streamlines the deployment of resources and configurations in a consistent and compliant manner. Question number 200 of the series. How many management groups can be supported in a single directory? Your options are 10, 100, 1000, or 10,000. And the correct answer here is option D, 10,000. There are certain limits that apply when dealing with management groups in Azure. One of them is what is being talked about in this question. Some of the other limits are a management group tree can support up to 6 levels of depth. Each management group can only support one parent. I already have a detailed video around management groups and hierarchy in Azure. If you would like to understand this in more detail, then look out for the video on the channel, whose link is also available in the description section. There are many questions around hierarchy in Azure in AZ-900 exam, so it's very critical you understand the different type of hierarchies, which includes management groups, subscriptions, resource groups. So go through the video to understand it in more detail. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this video, friends. If you haven't looked at other parts of the series yet, then explore them as well to get the maximum benefit from our content. As I've already mentioned, we have over 420 questions in the series, so feel free to explore all the parts so that you are well prepared for your exam and you crack the exam in first attempt. Now, link to the playlist is available in the description section of this video. And friends, if you are watching the videos when all the parts are not released, then stay tuned for more parts in our Azure Fundamentals exam practice question series.